Hello, and welcome to the FEE3 2025 interview for Life of Seiros. My name's Olivia, and I'm here with the game's lead developer, Augenis. Say hi.
Hello.
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 And we're just going to hop right into the interview, I think. Augenis, describe your game to me. What is Life of Seiros?
So, Life of Seiros is, well, what it says on the title. It is supposed to be a prequel to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is set during one of the probably most famous events in its lore, the War of Heroes, and it follows young Rhea in her quest to avenge the slaughter of her people, to found the Church of Seiros, to gather the followers, to be able to defeat Nemesis, and so on and so forth. While at the same time, the hack seeks to, build upon the lore of Fódlan to explore its ancient past, to explore its politics, its economics, its society, and in general, just be kind of a love letter to free houses. And
Hmm.
and uh, what probably one of my favorites Fire Emblem games, and
It's a lot of
one I
people's
wanted to
favorite,
expand
yeah.
upon more. Yes.
I've always thought that the setting of Fódlan had a lot of extra stuff to explore. I'm curious, is that what made you decide to make a prequel hack, or was it something else that inspired you?
Well, of course, I am, a big Free Houses fan. If I were not, I probably would not have started this project in the first place. And in fact, I first interacted with the ROM hacks for Fire Emblem specifically when I was playing Free Houses for the first time. And I was, on a Free Houses rage. I was looking for Free Houses content everywhere. And one of the reasons why I started like thinking about this ROM hack was because I was on FEU and I was looking around to see if there were any hacks around, the setting, around Three Houses, and there were basically none. There's Free Legacies, and I actually played it. It's really good, but I mean, more. There's not more, not a lot more. And when there's not a lot to choose from, you make it yourself. In general, I just always have a strange fascination with prequel stories in general, not just in Free Houses or in Fire Emblem in general. I love reading what other people think of how the setting of some sort of work happened before the main story. What was it like? How did it develop to the way we know it today? And and it's just interesting because to seeing how other people or yourself, how you fill those gaps tells a lot about how you yourself perceive that work, how you judge it, so what do you think of it, what's important about it. So uh, and I decided to try. I had my hand in it myself to try create this like exploration of the past of free houses to try to give my own take to what it would be like.
That sounds really interesting. So, besides Free Houses, were there any other big inspirations for Life of Seiros? You said that you're really interested in prequels in general. Maybe there's like a prequel in
Yes,
particular that
yes.
inspired you?
Uh, well, during my development of this hack, I played quite a lot of ROM hacks, and in whenever I play a ROM hack or just a Fire Emblem game, even, I always start thinking like I see something cool, something interesting, and I think, oh, this could go into my hack. I could try something similar. I could like replicate this. I could like implement something similar, and uh, well, not necessarily a prequel. One of the ROM hacks that actually did quite inspire me, which I picked up very early on when I had just started working on Life of Seiros, was Darkstone by Saint Rebellion. In a way, it kind of is in a similar niche. It's a work in an established setting. It takes a major character, one of the main antagonist of Sacred Stones, and tries to explore them, tries to see what the story would be like from their perspective, and it worked quite well. And whenever I played it, I was thought, well, I can also do something similar. I can try to replicate what succeeded here and try to make my own attempt at a ROM hack and an established work. In this case, being in free houses. So, but in general, I just play a lot of ROM hacks, and every time I play one, I just think, well, I can take something from this. I can take something from this and implement it, and it's kind of, an inspiration.
Yeah, I think that's a strong thing to be able to do as as a developer, to be able to take inspiration from all facets of the things that you are playing and consuming and things like that.
Yes, it's in general something that's important for an artist to,
Yeah,
because you cannot create art solely by yourself. You still need to like draw inspiration, draw from experiences from others to learn what they've succeeded at, what they've not succeeded at, and try to implement it in a better way in your own
there's
hacks.
a there's a screenshot that floats around in the writing channel in the FEU Discord of one of our regulars just like searching through his message history, and he says, uh, "Good artists steal, great artists steal more." And he said this
Yes,
like
definitely.
20 times. There's just a wall of him saying this over the course of like 3 years. But it's true. It's the reason
It's true.
that
It's
you say
it's
it so
true.
much.
Yes, it's definitely true.
All right, let's stop stumbling over my words. How has your game evolved since the last time you were at FE3? I know that you were here last year.
Yes, I was last year. It was actually last year was the first time ever that I participated in FE3 because in general, Life of Seiros is my first like
Hmm.
actual full-length ROM hack, and it's the first time I'm trying something of this magnitude in this community at least. So probably the first thing I would say is that it in general progressed quite a lot since last time. The last time Life of Seiros was in FE3, it had about, I think, 7 chapters, and now it's 13 chapters, and the ones that were last time have been polished, have been improved, have been tested. The graphics were updated quite a bit. I improved quite a lot in the splicing during that year and fixed quite a lot of my old poor sprites. Actually, one of the ones that were in my previous trailer of Nemesis, I had actually fixed a few days before the trailer
Oh
was
no.
published. So I watched the trailer and I see my old Nemesis sprite, which is like had a terrible had terrible coloring, had errors everywhere, and I'm looking at it like, man, I just fixed this.
Stuff like that's
But
always
in
so
but
funny.
yes, yes, it's annoying, but it is telling of improving over
Exactly.
time. Yes.
And what is the goal for all this improvement? What do you want the final version of Life of Seiros to look like relative to where
Uh,
it is now?
this actually quite shifted quite a bit during development because when I first set out to make this hack, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to make a War of Heroes hack. I'm going to tell the whole story from the destruction of Nabatea to Rhea's final fight against Nemesis, and then when I start working on it, I realized that's not really possible because from a lore perspective, the actual war takes 150 years. So it's not really feasible in a ROM hack, in one ROM hack at least, to go through several generations. So I scaled down my ambitions, and currently the plan is about somewhat over 20, but less than 30 chapters, which detail a more self-contained story of specifically the beginnings of the conflict of Rhea's first struggle together with Wilhelm. And the whole hack itself, my plan is that it will be a fairly self-contained, a fairly competent experience, I would say, but which doesn't stray from vanilla, aside from specific instances, which uh, I will be able to talk about later during the interview.
All right. Well, one thing that I was really curious about when I started hearing about this, and I'm always interested about this when I hear people are working within like the Free Houses framework, is if there have been any Free Houses gameplay features that you've attempted to like port or maybe mimic within your own game. Because I know
Yes,
obviously FEGVA cannot do a lot of the things that Free Houses can, so it's always interesting to hear how people try to translate those things, or if they choose a different path.
yes. Actually, there have been several things from Free Houses. Some not as noticeable, others more noticeable that I've tried to implement in Life of Seiros. But probably the largest one is the crest system. So Life of Seiros uses the skill system that most hacks nowadays use. But if someone were to open it up and start playing, they would start to notice that it's kind of barren of skills, and that's because the skill system is reworked into the crest system, and instead all of the skills are reflavored into the different crests of the setting.
Oh,
So of course, only a handful of characters in the game start with a crest, but that's the key difference here is that, as you know, in the War of Heroes itself, the Rhea's four followers, the four saints, they gave away their, offered their crests to some of the human heroes that were alongside them, and that's exactly what you were able to do during this hack story. You are able to give some of your units the crests that your Nabatean units, like Kikol, also known as Setheth, wield from the start. And this has both, a gameplay flavor where you can customize your unit somewhat and choose which of them receive specific buffs, but also story integration, because there is for every crest there is let's say canon choice in air quotes, because of
right.
course they're all original characters. But for example, one of the two cavaliers you start during the hack, Paul, is the ancestor to Ferdinand from Three Houses fame, and he would canonically receive the crest of Kikol. But if you want, you can obviously have Kiko give it to another person, and then in a way you sort of twist the timeline somewhat of choosing which of the characters alongside you will become the so-called heroes that will later in Fódlan's story establish the noble houses that are famous in Three Houses itself.
Yeah.
And that gives both the gameplay replayability, but also an opportunity to like think about it in the story perspective. How have you changed the story of Three Houses itself? How you've changed the future of Fódlan?
Right, right. Oh, that sounds really fun. I love unit customization stuff like that. I guess that sort of plays into this next question, but I'll ask it anyway in case there's other things you want to talk about. What sets your game apart from other hacks in the scene? Like, what is it that you're doing that you think makes your game stand out from the rest?
Well, as I said, gameplay-wise, my first priority is to not be too crazy, but just make a competent experience that's just fun to play, that works, that is close to vanilla, but with its own unique quirks. I think the story side is probably the standout factor. Obviously, for a Free Houses fan, I would recommend trying this out because I do seek to like really develop upon the lore that we see in Free Houses. But even for someone who has never played Free Houses or maybe doesn't even quite like Free Houses, I've been aiming to write the story in such a way that it's easy to pick up even for someone like that. Actually, when I'm looking out for testers, for people to play, I'm often pick out people who've never played Three Houses before, and I specifically try to see if the story is still comprehensible.
That seems
And
pretty
it
prudent. Yeah.
generally is. And the story itself, even when you take apart the Three Houses element, is I would say quite unique for Fire Emblem stories because you're not playing a noble, you're not leading an army to war in general. You're a preacher. Your first task is to build up the Church of Seiros, to build up a religion. And it's integrated into gameplay. You start by preaching to your units, by performing charities to build up a name for yourself. Then move on to having Rhea convert villages to acquire money from them and new units from them. And that gives us a very different feel to a story as compared to the usual Fire Emblem plot. And then in general, I hope that the story will be able to hit hard. It's a character study of Rhea just as much as it is, a story of the War of Heroes itself.
Right.
So I wouldn't really recommend it for someone who is not a fan of long stories and hacks, who would prefer a specifically gameplay-focused experience. But if someone who is down for a more story-focused experience and perhaps a more complex, complicated protagonist like Rhea, as we know is quite the complex character, I would say it would be for them. I would say.
Hi, awesome. I love a good story-based hack. All right. Sort of building off something that you said actually, where you mentioned that you want this to be something that people who have never played or maybe don't even like free houses might be able to enjoy. Are there any elements of free houses that you felt like you wanted to improve upon with this project? Things that you felt like that game didn't quite do well enough that you wanted to take your own crack at?
Well, I wouldn't say I wouldn't use the word improve, but if I would say when I sat down and decided to like build up the story to start writing down the chapter after chapter, I really wanted to expand on Fódlan itself because sometimes it does feel a little shallow
Hmm.
compared to certain other settings, and uh, and I myself am just generally a fan of in-depth world building. I'm a graduate of political science, so I love getting into,
Oh,
the
that's interesting.
nitty-gritty of like the society, of the politics, of the economics, and a lot of the optional conversations between characters in houses, in villages, and so on. They seek to touch upon one or another aspect of the world of Fódlan, and specifically this ancient Fódlan, which is actually quite different from the one we see in Three Houses. We see what Nemesis's reign is like, what specifically he does, because he does reign for 2 centuries. That's quite a long time. What was Nabatea like? What was Rhea's original like life before Nemesis like? What kind of religion does she build? Because that's also something that is not quite explored, which is surprising for a story that's really focused on religion. That the Church of Seiros and its tenets are sometimes a little glossed over, and I tried to delve into them. I tried to create something that would be able to attract so many people that 1,000 years ago it's just the sole religion of Fódlan. If it is such a large religion, it has to have something attractive to people, and I try
That
to,
makes sense to me, yeah.
to try to try to delve into the religious aspect.
All right. So you kind of want to try to fill out some world building details that you felt
Yes.
like weren't fully
Yeah,
explored in the original.
absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, we're coming up on the end of the interview here, so it's time for my favorite question. What's your personal favorite part of your project? Gush as much as you want. I love this stuff.
Talk as much as I want, you mean.
Gush, go
Uh,
on.
so there's several different things I would want to choose, but I think if I have to choose one, then everything about the Four Saints. I would say the Four Saints, Tikal, Cephalin, Indek, and Maquil. I mean, the first two also known as Seth the Flame. I just love everything I've done with them because I really wanted for them to be stand out just as much as Rhea itself. I didn't want them to be just your standard loyal followers who just follow after the protagonist while she does one thing or another. And each of them has their own unique perspective on Nabatea and on the world itself. And it's shaped by their different experiences, the experience of the fall of Nabatea. Like, for example, Maquil, the Wind Caller, we know him for Free Houses as, the one of the Four Saints who is really harsh on humanity, who says that they're just worthless, and that's exactly what you see in him. Well, for example, Cephalin, on the other side, she understands that Rhea is broken. And the reason why she tags along in general is because she thinks she's the only one of the Four Saints who actually tries to fix what's wrong with her a little, to try to talk to her, to try to understand her. And they each also bounce off one another. And just in cutscenes, it's really fun to write each one because when they all have their own different perspectives on such major events, such major story beats, then every time they're brought up, one person, one of them, for example, Keycall specifically is more noble of the four, who, but at the same time, who is the most skeptical towards Nabatea. For example, says one thing, then Maquil, who tries to defend the honor, let's say, of Nabatea, and just in general insist that they're superior to humanity, then bounces off against him, and so on and so forth. And every cutscene where I have to write them, or every story beat where I have to write them, just easily flows out, and easily I can easily write it down because I can immediately tell who's gonna say what, who's gonna bounce off, who's gonna say no, that's not right, and so on and so forth.
That's always a really good feeling as a writer.
Yes,
Getting
yeah,
together like a really solid ensemble that's just like completely natural and it's like super easy to work with them. It always just
yes,
feels great because then you can just kind of the words just fly out onto the paper, and it's always a
yeah.
lovely feeling.
Yeah, that was something I was, as I said, that was something I was worried about at the beginning, and I wanted to avoid specifically, them just being loyal followers that just don't really contribute much and just, say yes, or if they do say no to Rhea, then they're actually wrong or something, but they're not. But in this case, that's not necessarily the case. And the whole ecosystem between the four of them and between Rhea, I also really enjoy writing because each four of them has different reasons to tag along. They try to pull her into different directions, and during the story, just really shows how they try to shape her, try to push her towards one direction or another, and just in the end, we get the Rhea we see today.
Awesome. All right, let's finish up here. I think because we're starting to come up on the time limit a little bit. How many chapters is your project currently? You said 13, right?
Yes.
And how many
And
is
the
it planned to
prologue.
be?
As I said, over 20, less than 30, and then one epic epilogue.
And do you have any closing remarks outside of that? Anything you want to say that's just wasn't covered, sorry, by the questions we already asked?
Play it today, and I will be very happy.
All right, we can find the link to your Fred down in the description of this video, so anyone who thinks that this sounded really interesting, they can check it out there and play the work-in-progress version of it. Hopefully, people enjoy. I think it's really cool to see.
Always open for
like,
feedback.
Yeah,
Always
exactly.
open for feedback.
And I think it's really interesting to see more ways to explore the setting of Fódlan, because I remember really liking stuff like Free Hopes and stuff like that as a way to look at parts of the setting that the base game never really got a chance to. So hopefully this gets to have that similar kind of effect.
Yes, I certainly hope. I certainly hope I will be able to contribute to Treehouse's discourse. Actually, that was actually going to be the final. That one of my goals is to contribute to Treehouse's discourse.
Finally, 10 more years of Free House's discourse. We didn't have enough of it.
Yes.
All right.
I am the sole enjoyer.
Well, thank you all for watching. I hope this was really interesting. It was lovely talking to you.
It was lovely talking to you as well.
Yeah. We have several more of these interviews, just like this one, here at FEE3, so keep an eye out for those, as well as all the other lovely showcases that we'll have going on. I hope you have a wonderful FEE3 2025, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. See you later.